Welcome everybody to week 12. As you can see, and as you're probably experiencing, now we are getting into the meat and potatoes of the written proposal and the multimodal presentation portion of Writing Project 4. So in case you're having a little trouble kind of figuring out how things are supposed to look in the long term, at the end of the day, at the end of Writing Project 4, that is in a couple weeks here, at the end of the semester, you'll be required to turn in 2 items. The first item, of course, is a written proposal where you write an essay that persuades me and your audience that your proposal or your solution is a good idea and gives us a way to kind of join in on the actual community or the support. Basically, how can someone, a reader or a viewer, support your solution and help it become a reality? Secondly, after you've made that written product, we'll also be doing presentations where it'll just be you recording a video and submitting it to a discussion board. And in that video, you'll have to have some sort of online-based mode of communication, whether that be a website, whether that be a social media site, a funding website like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. Some sort of online presence that you can have to provide your readers and your viewers with a place to where they can go to support your cause. So here this week, that's kind of what we're starting to develop. That stuff that I've just described, that's not due until the end of the semester. So what we're doing this week is we're actually getting ready to develop those. We're kind of taking the first step in building an online presence, because I realize that not everyone has ever made a website or made a social media account or done anything like that. So the very first thing you're going to have to do this week is consider, what do you think would be the most effective means of communicating with supporters of your solution online? So if you are suggesting that we need to change a particular law, if you're trying to reach your audience, what mode of communication online would be the best way to do that? Would you create a social media page? Would you create a website? Would you create a petition online to where people can go in and give you signatures that you can then send to maybe the state legislator or something like that? What do you think is the most effective means? So here, this week, I've provided several examples and several videos on how to create these certain things. The very first one that I showed here, you can kind of see that I made a social media example number 1 is a Twitter account. The Twitter and the Facebook and some of these are actually sites and things that I used whenever I was creating funding and support for a video game based curriculum that I was using in my classroom last year. So I'm actually still working on this, but nonetheless, these are the presences, because I made multiple sites. This is my presence online when I was trying to create this solution. My solution, of course, was a video game. So what we need to do at this point is kind of make that solution open to the public, viewable by the public. If you choose to do Twitter, here I've provided you one example, and it is a Twitter account for the solution that I was creating, and it was a video game. And so you can kind of see here all the stuff. So if you choose to do Twitter, check out this example and then go into the video on how to create that. Now, you don't have to have your website or social media account or whatever created this week, but you do have to explain to me which one you're going to choose and why you're going to choose it. So for instance, if you don't choose Twitter, you also have other options like Facebook. And if you don't like social media, you have the option of using a website. And there are many website creators out there to where you can create a free website. Wix.com, W-I-X right here, is just one. There's also things like GoDaddy I know people have used. I'm not too familiar with that one myself. But there is a way to use that. And so here is also my website that I created to go along with my Twitter account. And you can kind of see what I've developed here. Now mine's a little bit more extensive. You don't have to create logos and have people do pictures. I actually had to hire someone to do those. So you don't have to do those things, but do something to make your presence known. If you don't choose to make a website, you can also make a petition. And I'm actually kind of partial to these. These are really effective if you're trying to get something bigger changed. And the thing that people forget about change.org, or maybe that scares them, is that change.org is an official petition site. So if you do a petition, you have to follow through with it. So you can't go on there and say, let's get 10,000 signatures so that we can change the gun laws in Nebraska. If you do that, you have to follow through with it. You can't just get all those signatures and say, okay, never mind, guys, this was just for class. But that's also something that limits people. Don't consider this just a project for your class. If you're creating a petition and it legitimately supports the solution that you are suggesting, go through with it. I'm not above giving extra credit, especially if something like this begins to work. If you get a petition and you get thousands of signatures, well done, and hats off to you, because that is a very difficult thing to achieve. Now, how am I grading this? Well, I'm not necessarily grading on how well your solution does. I'm not grading on how many signatures you have. I'm not grading on how many followers you have on Twitter or Facebook. I'm not following how many people visit your website. I'm grading you on how well you communicate your solution and how easy it is for a supporter to support what it is you're doing. So for instance, if you want me to sign your petition, you would have to provide a way for me to sign it. So for instance, one medium would just be to create a change.org petition. But something you could also do is you can do multiples. If you decide to do a petition on change.org, you can also make a supplemental Twitter page to make it more accessible. Because change.org, if you make a petition on change.org, it's only accessible via change.org. So the only people that will see it are those people that go to change.org. Now, of course, that doesn't stop you from actually sharing it via your own Facebook or your own Twitter. As you can see over here on the right-hand side, you can post it to Facebook, you can post it here, you can post it on Twitter, you can send emails to friends. So that's also a way that you can kind of communicate. Let's see, the next one is a GoFundMe page. Now these can get a little hairy, but I do suggest that these be used for things that are, again, serious. If you are creating a GoFundMe page, you're creating a funding website. So the page that you're creating, for instance here, obviously I didn't raise a whole lot of funds, I only raised $305, but the point being is that you are creating a number of avenues for people to donate money to you. So for instance, you can click here and do donate now, and people can donate to your cause. Now, if you have a cause that is going this route, you have to make sure that you actually use the money on what you say you're going to use it for, otherwise it becomes illegal. So if you say that you're going to raise money to send little Johnny whoever to college, well, that has to be put towards his college fund, or if you're doing it to bail so-and-so out of jail or something like that. Whatever you're raising this money for, make sure you raise the money and use it appropriately, because the last thing you want to do is raise all this money and say, okay, I'm going to go to Disneyland and I'm going to spend all the money that people donated. So while this is meant for a class, the GoFundMe funding page, the Change.org petition, the Wix.com, the Facebook, and the Twitter account, you are creating a solution that we are exposing to the public. So you can't go out there and say, this is my solution, and lie to everyone. You have to have a viable solution. You have to have something that you can follow through with. And you can't be making promises that aren't going to be real. Namely, you can't raise funds and then not put those funds towards something, and you can't make a petition that you don't intend to sending to the actual recipient. So it's not that I want to make sure that I'm not deterring people from using any of these because they're worried about the actual repercussions. The idea behind this is to get you exposed to all of the options for communication that you have online. One thing that you'll see as you get further into your degree, probably, is that online communication is a literacy. It's digital literacy. And what I mean by that is if you can read a book, you are literate. If you can watch a movie and understand it, you are literate in that form of media. If you can play a game and understand the context of the game, of the video game, you are literate in that medium, in video games. If you can take a computer apart and put it back together, you are literate in that development. If you can read Latin, you're literate in Latin, obviously, but it's more than that. If you can read a play in a football game, you are literate in football. So here, if you can understand a website and you can understand a petition or an online social media page like Twitter or Facebook, you are literate in social media. You are literate in websites. you are literate in petitions. So that's what we're developing here. Is we're developing literacy in the digital era, because many things are now going completely digital, and that's more or less what we're developing here, that skill. So your job this week, as you see down here, online mode of communication explanation. Number 1, explain your solution. What is the solution to the problem that you've been discussing for the last 12 weeks? And what is the solution that you're going to be outlining in this next written proposal? Excuse me. Number 2, explain which mode of online communication you plan to use. Are you going to use Facebook, Twitter, website, change.org, GoFundMe, or something else? You're not restricted to these 5. These are just the 5 that I'm giving you that kind of get you started. If you find something else that you would prefer to use, just run it by me, and that way I can support you in it, because I don't want someone to create some kind of crazy off-the-wall website that can't be affiliated with a school or something like that. And then number 3, explain why you think this mode of communication is effective for your solution. If you're going to try and change a law, you probably don't want to create a Twitter page, because how is a Twitter page going to effectively help you change the law? If you're trying to get a law changed, create a change.org, or create a petition, or create something where people can join you and support you in actually getting the job done. After you've done those 3 things, and I'm not looking for any kind of word count there, I just want to know that you understand what you're doing. That way I can help you if you don't. After that, just give me the works cited page for writing project 4. You are writing a proposal, so you're basically making a written version of your online medium. So that is, you are creating a paper that is proposing your solution as an option, and you're trying to write it to people who are potential activists in your solution. So for instance, you write it if you're doing changing gun laws. This proposal would be written to your projected audience, maybe the Senate, or people within your community that might support this cause, or someone that you want to try and get to support you in some form or fashion. That's what the written proposal is meant to be. So you're basically writing an essay that proposes a solution and tries to persuade the reader to join you in agreeing with that solution. So the assignment then is the works cited page for that, because you are persuading someone of the effectiveness or the appropriateness of your solution. You have to have sources that are going to support what you're saying. If you tell me that gun laws will help raise or lower gun violence, you have to have statistics and outside sources to support that. This is still an academic essay. You can't just make your own claims without having any support for them. So make sure that you're supporting your claims with outside sources. Now, you only need 5, so I'm assuming that since the last writing project needed 5 as well, you probably already have them. So if you end up turning in the same works cited page for this project as you did the last project, that's completely fine, because some people will legitimately be using the exact same sources, and that's good. Last but not least is week 12 reading. This guy down here, it really is no assignment here, but there is an example of a written proposal on page 263 of your textbook. So make sure you read that chapter and view that essay at the end of that chapter so that you can get a good idea of what a written proposal looks like. Now, this proposal doesn't exactly follow the same format that I outlined for you guys last week. The outline that I outlined, the format that I gave you last week, was one that I find to be very easy to follow. But if you want to follow the example that's in the book on page 263, you can definitely do that as well. So in the short, or in summary, you have 3 assignments due. 1, explain your solution, explain the online communication you plan to use, Facebook, Twitter, website, petition, whatever, and then explain why you think that's appropriate for your solution. Give me your works cited page, and then do your reading so that you can prepare for your written proposal that will be due here in a few weeks. Other than that, you don't necessarily have to watch all of these videos. If you know you want to do a Facebook page, then check out my Facebook page, check out the video here on how to create a Facebook page, and then go with it. You don't have to read the Twitter page or the Twitter example if you don't plan on making a Twitter account. Same goes for a website or a petition or funding website as well. So if you have any questions, as always, feel free to communicate with me via Skype, email, text, phone call, or whatever else. And this week, week 12, today is Friday, I'm recording this video, so it will open up on Sunday at midnight. Other than that, let's have a good week, and make sure you let me know if you're having any confusion, because I realize that this part of the class becomes very different because it's pushing people outside their box. And while that is good, it is also challenging. So make sure you communicate with me and let me know if you have any issues so that I can be there to help. Other than that, I will see you guys next week, and have a good week.